Her name is Ty from the United Confederation of Taino People, and she is going to talk about Standing Rock. She's had some friends up there in Standing Rock, and I'm sure she's got some stories to tell. So please, without further ado, let's bring Ty onto our stage, per se, and she has been a defender of human rights at the United Nations. So let's say, aha, Ty!
Thank you, Lisa. Good thing that they fixed the microphone. And I have good projection, so hopefully you will grasp my message. My name is Ty Pelly. I am Taino, Daka Taino Boriking. I am a Taino from Boriking. You know it as Puerto Rico, but we have the colonizer's name. It is really important for me to be here, not only as a human rights defender and indigenous rights defender, but also as a Taino, because after all, we were the first people to feel the wrath of the colonizers on this side of the world. And for many of you, if you get to hear about us, you will hear about the Arawaks, just like saying Latino, right? It's based on language, not on the kind of people that we are. And even people in the Caribbean that look exactly like me and that know exactly who they come from are taught that we do not exist. So I am talking and I'm here and I'm saying Daka Taino, and I think that it's incredible and super important that the presence here in Orlando is not just about indigenous faces, it's not just about indigenous peoples. That Orlando has understood that we have a commitment to save our water. That one of the things that is happening right now is that they know the industry of fossil fuels is on the decline. So they are doing anything and everything possible to try to squeeze as much money as they can from that type of industry. So here we're defending and standing in solidarity to our brothers and sisters in North Dakota, the Dakota, the Nakota, and the Dakota, with over 300 tribes represented there and many others that have gone to visit them. I want you to know also that we have Taino brothers on the front line. And to me, that's very symbolic, because you have the first people that felt that wrath also standing in solidarity with our brothers in the north. I think that has some spiritual significance. When I see the faces here, I know that perhaps I'm preaching to the choir, because you took the time, regardless of the weather. You know, even some of us northerners, after a little while, we get used to the warm weather. So I appreciate the fact that you are here when we think that it's so cold, right? But just to give an example, because many of us that have been addressing the Dakota Access Pipeline and the danger that it represents to our water, to our environment, just to give you an idea, I'm sure that you have found that as well. Not too long ago, we all had the scare of Matthew in Central Florida. And I can tell you that because I had to go to a speaking engagement, 2 days before Matthew was supposed to arrive, I went to the supermarket. And there was no water. And yet I have seen, when we have marched at Lake Viola, I have seen people that refuse to either join us. I have seen people that refuse to carry that little piece of paper because they don't want to take the time to stop, or they don't want to carry and fold that little paper. Or you're asking people to read a little paragraph so that they know that our water here is in danger as well. This is not just about North Dakota. This is not an indigenous problem. Indigenous peoples have raised their flag to say we need to protect the water, but it's not just for indigenous people, it's not just for the Dakota. Approximately 20 million people would be affected should that pipeline, as we know they break, breaks. And I'm telling you that I can guarantee you that the same person that said to us, no, I don't want to carry that paper, no, I'm not interested, will be the first one fighting to get that bottled water. Will be the first one that will try to stomp on your head because they need water. The same one that does not stand by you. The same one that does not want to be bothered with that little piece of paper that we're handing out at Lake Eola. So I think that we need to educate people that this is not, indigenous people might have risen and we have a different way. We would think that with prayer, we think that with unity, we think that with spirit, Creator will open the eyes of those that have been against us. That is the way to do it. Not using violence, but taking a stand. And do not think for a second that this is just our brothers that are Lakota, and Dakota. We already know how many people are standing with Standing Rock like we are right here. I want to tell you a little bit about what sustainable development is. The United Nations, every 15 years, they come up with this agenda. And that's like pretty much the plan, the business plan of what's going to happen in the next 15 years. So we had the goals of the millennium that ended that went from 2000 to 2015. And about 3 years before that agenda is to expire, the United Nations, civil society, and many groups, including indigenous peoples, begin talks about how this agenda is to be developed. What happened on the agenda of the millennium, the 2001 to 2015, was that the indigenous peoples were not mentioned whatsoever. And guess what? If you have a business plan and you don't have it in the business plan, nothing is going to happen with those that you don't mention. So indigenous peoples really wanted to make sure that they were included. And they were like a number of groups, like I said, from civil society. You have technology, you have business interests, you have indigenous peoples, you have women, and so forth. And we were able to and fought for like 3 years to make sure that we were included in the language. Please understand that if you look at sustainable development goals tonight when you go and play with your computer, if you look at those 17 goals, you will see that a lot of things is clean water, clean energy, right? But yet, look at what's happening. The 2030 agenda is already in place. We are in November of 2016. And if you just take a second and look around, we're fighting to defend our water. So this same agenda, by this same system that came up with these wonderful 17 goals and 169 targets, is really the one that's pushing this same crisis, because we see it as a crisis. We say water is life, and yet a lot of people have really not understood that most of what we see, we always talk about being flesh and bones, right? I'm flesh and bones. I feel it, What do you think I'm made of? But you see, the thing is, you say you're flesh and bones, but is that really what makes most of you? It is water, okay? It is water. Most of what you are is water. That's why you have that connection with this blessed liquid. And we have to respect it, and we have to make sure that we teach at the level of whatever it is that we have in our lives, whether it is our neighbor, our grandchildren, our kids, our buddy, our partner. We need to make sure that we open the eyes, that we run the curtain to understand that our life it's at stake here. If we damage the environment, if you take a look, now it's not even countries that are doing this. Really, our biggest enemy is corporations. This TPP, just look at what that means. Okay, you may have a country that allows for a project to go on, right? They didn't get the free prior informed consent that the law says you're supposed to get from these people that will be affected by it, as we know did not happen with the Lakota, with our brothers there in Standing Rock. We know that there was no free prior informed consent. And as a matter of fact, they didn't even honor their treaties, because that's treaty land as well. So besides that process, what we understand here is that no matter where you go, that no matter where you look at, we need to stand together. We need to have we need to validate what's really happening with our environment. It's being at risk. You may have a country, like I said, going back to this three-part of full consent, that says, okay, company, you can go and do that project. And the company goes and makes the project. And now these group of people come and say, listen, country, they're violating our rights. They're violating our human rights. And country goes back, listen, you need to stop that project. You know, it's really affecting these people here. But what we're hearing from the company is, oh, really? If you want me to stop that project, I'm going to sue your country so much that you will never make enough money to pay me. So, as a country, what do? Do you let maybe that tribe of 1,000 people, 300, whatever, perish and do as let them continue? Or do you save the 300 or the 1,000 and then condemn your country for God knows how long, because now you're going to be sued by this corporation? That is happening right now. So even when you have a country that may be wanting to defend human rights and indigenous people's rights, that is what they are being faced with. I think that we cannot just leave it in the hands of our governments. I think that we have not recognized to what degree we have the power. We need to come from the local foundation to the national, to the international. When we go to the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, which, by the way, they're still not calling us peoples, but when we go to the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, we are going there to fight for our rights, to fight for our cultural rights, environmental rights, sacred sites, and the likes, to present issues. But we're still going to their living room. Don't think for a second that because they have the word indigenous on that forum, that it is our living room. It is still their place. And what we do over there, it's necessary. What we can accomplish there is necessary. We have the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And those of you here that are indigenous, as well as those of you that support what's right, I invite you to take a look at the UN Declaration. We need to start using that document. Some countries are saying it's not legally binding. Well, the thing is that it was inspired on all kinds of international instruments that are legally binding. It took almost 30 years for that UN Declaration to get adopted at the United Nations. It's only a little booklet like this, 46 articles, but it took them almost 3 decades for them to adopt it. If that was being done today, that would not be approved. So it is up to the people to use the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And I encourage everybody, not just indigenous, but every single person that is for equality and understands that we are all human, we are all here. Creator has sent us all to share this space and this air and this water and this experience. It is something that is necessary. I invite you to keep social media running. You know that a lot of our brothers and sisters are going through major problems. Human rights violations are rampant. We know that we have representatives, Grand Chief Ed John went on an official visit, and Cacique Lucaro Borrero, who is also Taino, and went as a representative of the International Indian Treaty Council as a human rights observer. They saw these violations. They heard the stories, and mind you, this was just a couple of days. This was from the 29th to the 31st. Do you get a chance to talk to every single person that has been violated? And let's talk about sacred sites. I am telling you that you can go to a museum and you may find, for example, in the Caribbean, if you go to a museum, you will not find, just like you don't find here, the bones under a glass box of any, you don't see it of George Washington, right? But yet you will see it on indigenous peoples. You will never imagine, like there was a brother here from Massachusetts, and a lot of these cities have like old cemeteries. You go to New York City, in the middle of the city, you have a cemetery, right? That would be considered good real estate land, right? If we put our corporate hats, wouldn't that be considered prime land in the middle of Manhattan? However, nobody dares touch that cemetery. Founding fathers! Founding fathers! But yet they can go into our sacred sites. They can go into our burial grounds and dig, and nobody says anything. And I think that people need to personalize that. You see, you cannot be thinking, well, it's a cemetery. I want you to think of somebody that you love very much and somebody that you would bury. Would it be okay for somebody to do that to your loved one? So when we talk about sacred sites, and you see these people defending over there in North Dakota, and you see some of you, I'm sure were watching online just like I did, when they were removed to the south, and the first thing that digger did was go right over a sacred site. It was like on your face. And being peaceful and being non-violent does not mean not speaking up. Does not mean not defending your rights. We don't have to apologize for who we are. And if you are not indigenous, if you think that you are so non-indigenous, let me tell you, somebody is indigenous from somewhere. Somewhere in that DNA of yours, somebody lived in a tribe. So I am asking you in solidarity to open your minds, to take a look at the bigger picture here. I came as our sister invited me, and we care very much about what's happening in Standing Rock. We had an official visit. Do not think for a second that things that happen at the UN will just go like this. I told you the UN declaration took almost 30 years to approve. But you see, we have been writing. We have been making urgent actions. Chief Archambault went there. But you see, when we started here in Orlando, the next thing is Sable Trail. We need to talk about Sable Trail. The aquifers and all the things that can happen here. But you see, when I went there, I had to say I have to talk about my island. Because now, because of this same thing that I told you, it's an industry in decline. They're supposed to go with the solar and the clean and this renewable energy. You know, these people are using our resources. Mother Nature is not a resource. But they're using these resources as if they had no end. But they do. And because they're going on that decline and they know that the industry is going to change, they're going crazy. And I'm asking you, keep an eye open. Because we're going to need you too. The people in Puerto Rico, the people in Borinquen are going to need you. Because they want to rush a gas port on one of our, on the south part of our island. That will destroy the fisheries, destroy corals, mess up the water. It will impact, it will have a tremendous impact. And right now, the portions that you read about my island are pretty much like the ones that you're reading from Dapple on CNN. Non-existent. So this is something that no matter where, we're here for Standing Rock. We're standing in solidarity, but we need to stand together against Sable Trail. We need to stand together against the gas port in Borinquen, my island of Puerto Rico. I really invite you to educate yourself as much as you can, to share as much as you can of all the injustices, all these live pictures, all these updates. People must know, and people must rise. And maybe it takes you a little bit of time. Maybe it will take for you to explain until Peter understands. And there will be some Peters that do not understand. There are some people that, as somebody told me, they're plugged into the matrix. And no matter what happens, that's how they will stay. What I'm saying to you is, those of us that are not need to make a difference. And it is by standing together, by understanding and explaining to others. See, sometimes people don't understand. Like I said, this is not an indigenous people's issue. It started because it happened on their land. Treaty land. A treaty that has been not honored, as many others. Okay, as they're experts on breaking treaties, not honoring treaties. But this is something that has to do with more. And right now, with the conditions that we have in this country at this moment, where my niece and I walk out of a Walgreens, and I see this, and I want to share this because we're all living this in Orlando, just as we are in every part of the country. My niece and I are walking out of Walgreens, and I see this lady, this white lady, and she looks at me almost like, I wonder what this Indian woman is going to do to me or say. And she looks at me like she's like, no lady, I'm not that kind. But at the same time, I'm looking at her just in case she happens to be one of those that says, you know what? And it's because people don't understand. So, sometimes it takes not for the indigenous person to talk to you, but for you that look so different from us to talk to your friend and explain. No, it started with the Lakota people. It started at the Standing Rock Reservation. But you see, it's about the water of over 20 million people. That's what this is about. That is what they're trying to defend. And then you can use the example. Think of your mother, think of your father, whomever it is that you think you're going to bury, and put them in that picture. How would they feel? Well, that's what they have done. I really thank you. I could be telling you 8 million things about what's happening to our environment, but it is at stake right now. And like I said, our biggest enemy is the greedy corporations. And when we say greedy corporations, just remember that we're just talking about a handful of people that are behind them, making an impact on the lives of every single one of us. You have a great night. Bumatong sa nagkakakona, abundant blessings to everybody.